Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 of how to build a Craftsman kit. Today we'll be doing painting of everything. I'm going to go through how to paint most of these things. Probably hold off on a lot of the details until later, just as we build it, and I'll focus on how to paint these big parts here. Here's our picture of what we're doing, and I've got these two paints I'll be using. The khaki here should work well for the sidewalls. They're a little grayer than that, but I'm happy with khaki. And then my dark green is plantation pine. Will work for our siding, doors, and windows. So as you can see, I've got siding here, doors, window frames, windows, window sills here. Then the building sides, the floor, and the roof are here. And I'll get all of these painted up today, and I'll show you how to paint them. I do paint the inside of these buildings too, regardless of whether you'll see it or not, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, let's start painting. Now, to do the walls, we'll need a couple things. Paint, in this case the khaki color, sponge. I use dry sea sponges from Joann's Fabric, palette, just to put the paint in. I have a piece of this paper off to the side here where I'll be dabbing out the paint before putting it on, and then obviously the piece you're going to be painting. So I'll only paint one of these right now. I'll paint the rest of them off the screen here to give you guys a shorter idea of what I'm going for, but pretty easy. Shake your paint up. I've already done that pretty well. Pour a little squirt in there. And then I usually take a clean side here, but usually pointy end. Take it, get some paint on there. I like to dab it off and then start dabbing it on your model. You want to make the layer thick and consistent, but not overly coated here. Add a little bit more paint every now and then and work through it. The harder you press here, the more paint will get into the interstitial spaces of that siding and whatnot. I kind of want to keep most of that siding kind of showing here, all these laser lines, and it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. Leave them open. I rather like the kind of weathered look, but and then you're just looking to get all these kind of consistently covered in paint, which you should be able to tell by paint color and wetness. So now I've got our, that quickly, we've got a completely painted piece here, and good to go. So the other side I'll paint gray on the back here. I did add more bracing from my last video because I realized that the grain runs this way, so I need to brace it against the grain here so that it won't warp, because it'll warp along the grain like this. It'll curve that way. But regardless, there's one side. So I'll meet you back with the rest of the sides painted. All right, well, while I'm painting everything else, we'll do the trim as well. So I got some plantation pine here and all my window pieces. And then I do not want to paint this piece that's under here, and I do not want to paint anything outside of here green. So these are the window sills that will have green, and then everything here will be green. And I just got that by looking at the diagram and deciding, looking at which pieces are here, which pieces go in the model where, and then deciding while everything's still in the sprue here where I want to put it. So that's where I'm at. Anyways, get to painting. A generous glob of paint. Grab a new sponge and start one over here. dab this off here when I do it so that I can keep paint more or less off of the model, so that I'm adding thinner layers of paint. And you can do this so you can keep the layers more, that's what I'm looking for. You can make splotchy layers here where you can simulate chip paint and stuff with your sponges, and so you can add paint here. You could add another paint color and then do this over it. You know, luckily in our case, most of this stuff is wood colored because it is wood, which helps. Also with the wood being porous and not as a styrene or a plastic, it does take paint pretty well. So I don't have many issues with the second coat, and I've hardly ever done a second coat. I don't find that I need it. It's usually too much paint, and I get a good enough coating with my first coat. One thing I will do with this though is that even as I go through this, I will take a second coat that'll go on the back side. I'm going to do it for all of them, but for this one I think that since we're doing the inside and the outside of the model, that doing the back side of this won't be a bad idea. We're also using a sponge as opposed to a brush, because a brush will leave, especially this acrylic paint here, it'll leave brush marks, which I don't want. It makes the model look unrealistic, in my opinion. So by doing this, it's not spraying the model. Spraying would be most ideal, but I don't have a spray booth, so I do all my stuff in my office downstairs in my basement. This is a quick and easy way to accomplish basically the same thing as spraying without spraying. Need some more paint. If you are inclined to finish your models faster, one thing you can do is you can take a hairdryer. Hopefully your wife either has an extra one, an old one, or you can go buy a cheap one, and you can blow dry your models here, and that'll work well to dry the paint super fast. Only with acrylics though. The oil-based paints will just dry naturally, and it takes them quite a while to dry, which is another reason I use acrylic paint. So here's the trim. We'll be back with the rest of the stuff painted here in a little bit. Let's paint the other sides and the inside of the building. All right, well, I've gone ahead and painted everything, and I got everything ready to start assembly. One side note here is, even though everything's painted here, I will, like when I take these parts out, if I notice that there's the sides are burnt, so they're mostly black, which generally isn't an issue for me. But I do some touch-up painting as I assemble the model. So I'll assemble a window, and then I'll do a little bit of touch-up paint, and then go from there. But for the most part, everything's finished. The windows are pretty easy. It's just both sides. This part's for the top of the exhaust vent for the stove in this little yard office, and I'll get that painted black when I put it all together and put it on the model. It's one of the last things I usually do. But I got the roof painted inside. It'll be gray with the rafters, and the top's tan, and that'll have the I was gonna have tar paper roof on it, but I have some extra shingles from another project, so I'm going to use those instead. I think those will look a lot nicer. I got all my walls done. They did not warp at all. They look great. And I painted the inside gray. I did most of it with the sponge to cover most of the area. And then I went and cut in the little edges here with the paintbrush. It took a little bit, but it is what it is. You can get as much or little detail out of these guys as you want. One fairly big thing I did here was I made I don't like it when buildings just lay flat in the layout. I like it when they have a foundation, and I haven't thought about doing this until now because this one actually came with a floor on it and everything, and so I added this cross bracing to help keep it from warping when I applied the India ink and alcohol to it. But I went ahead and added some fascia siding to it, and then this will set down into the layout there and make it look like it's a concrete foundation for the building, which I think will look pretty good. And then in order to do the wood here, I just treated it with India ink. So I have a giant jar of alcohol and India ink, which I buy from, I think it's Hobby Lobby for however much, and you do a ratio. There's articles on the internet to show you how to mix it. There's different colors. You can do browns and reds and blacks. I prefer black. I think this looks like a pretty realistic wood color. So I've got the front porch here. I've got the inside of the building. I think it looks stellar. And then I've got everything else is painted here, ready to be pulled apart. And then again, once I actually go to build the building, I will have to do a little bit of touch-up painting here and there, but it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, the next step will be putting in the windows. I always, on a small kit like this, you know, it's not crazy big, but it's way easier to build your windows on your sides here before you put it all together. So you want to assemble the windows and the doors, and have them all put together, and then put the building together itself. Now you don't have to mess with everything as you do it, and go from there. So I find it makes it quite easier to build your models that way. But yeah, that's what I got. It's all painted for the most part, and I think it should be looking pretty good. So thanks for watching this one, and check in on the next one when we go to assemble everything. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and make sure you tell your friends about how to build a Craftsman kit. This is Northwest Mahler signing out.